So you've just gotten back from the hunt, and you've managed to bag yourself one of the brand new DC Multiverse Superman figures from McFarlane Toys. And all things considered, this is a fantastic figure between the sculpting detail, the articulation, and the color scheme, as well as that fantastic head sculpt. McFarlane has done a really good job with this one. But you also enjoy a nice cloth goods cape from time to time. If you're like me, you've decided to set about trying to rectify having this great big pre-posed molded, not very soft rubber cape with no S on the back. You want to rectify that situation and give the Man of Steel a cloth goods cape. The question at this point is not if we want to, but how we're going to go about doing it. Now, while I would hardly consider myself a pro at this kind of thing, I certainly think I've got some experience. My first Superman cape tuck was on a DC Universe Classics Superman body buck, and that was just simply drilling little holes into the neckline and stuffing the cape in. And I think that it was effective enough for what it was supposed to be. Next, I tried my hand at the DC Essentials, which, again, it was just simply drilling 2 holes into the neckline, 2 small holes, and stuffing the cape in. And again, I feel like it worked out pretty well. When it came to the body buck based on Libra Majo's artwork, things were a little bit more tricky. In the end, you can see that the neck is actually a separate piece that fits inside, and I just pulled it right out and stuffed the cape underneath, like that, and ta-da! Custom cape tuck. And finally, I also set about to replacing, or fixing if you will, the cape tuck from the San Diego Comic-Con Superman figure. So as you can see, I do have some experience with doing Superman custom cape tucks, all with varying degrees of success and tidiness, and all having different body bucks, presenting their own unique challenges. And being that the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Superman has butterfly hinges here and here, that only leaves us from here to here worth of meat to dig into to create our cape tuck. And that's a unique challenge in itself. You don't want to do the cape tuck into the butterfly hinge and restrict its movement, and you also don't want to cut all the way to the edge of the plastic so that there's nothing for the cape to stick into. Well, my solution to the problem was to use an X-Acto blade and very, very carefully pressing down, cut the rectangular holes right there along the neckline. And take note that I've left a little bit of plastic before you get to the end of the butterfly hinge, otherwise the cape will just slide out the sides. Pulling the cape off presents its own challenges. It's completely doable, but you'll note that there are small pegs right here at the shoulders, and there's also a big one right there at the back. That's where the cape used to be, and it actually leaves a giant lump of plastic, of which I actually had to grind down. Well, as you can see, I managed to tackle the problem with a certain amount of success, but it required a completely different solution. It meant no small drill bits and drilling into the figure itself. The cape that I've chose to use is actually a cape from a bootleg Sideshow Collectibles 1/6 scale Superman figure. And so for those of you wondering, that's how I got the S on the back. It's not anything I did, I just used one that already had an S. So in the end, all I needed was the cape, the figure, a blade, and a sharper, kind of pointier, but not too sharp because you don't want to damage the cape, implement to stuff the cape down into the holes. Now the real tricky part is getting the cape tucked into the holes in a way that makes sense so that it will wrinkle over his shoulders properly. That's always a challenge. You just gotta kind of stick the cape over the hole and just start stuffing it in and pushing it in and filling the hole, because the idea here is you don't want to use glue to hold this in place if you can help it, because glue tends to make things very messy. What I'm looking to do when I do a custom cape stuff is to stuff enough of the cape in the hole so that the cape just being stuffed in there will have enough pressure to hold the cape in place. And truthfully, I've never had a problem with this method. I've never, ever have I ever needed to use glue. And here's the end result. All you have to do is stuff the fabric into the holes. Luckily for us, Superman is a character who you tuck his cape into his neckline, and it does have kind of like a messy over-the-shoulders cape look to it. So, you know, I think that it works out. And that's the final end result. It's something that I did, and you can do too. Just be careful about the pointy implement you use to insert the cape into the holes. If it's too sharp, you will poke holes in the cape and damage it. But with a little determination and a little bit of confidence in yourself, you can take this and turn it into this. Anyway, super friends, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Hopefully you find this video useful. I have had people asking me all over Instagram through DMs and just in the images that I post how I did this. So here you go. Hopefully you find it useful and helpful. And until next time, have a DC day, everybody, and take care.